Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror comedy from the USA, English language, released in the year 2026, directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, and this film was called Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. So Ready or Not 2, Here I Come takes place after the first film. We have our main character who's covered in blood on the steps of this mansion. The police come and they arrest her because they believe she's responsible for all the hell that has been left behind. So she's under police guard in hospital until she gets over her injuries, and then she's going to be taken to the police station. So her emergency contact is her sister. She hasn't seen her sister in a long time. They don't really like each other, so it's a very awkward reunion when she gets to the hospital. But unfortunately, what they don't realise is in the very, very near future, this hospital is going to be laid siege upon because the game from the first film has come back to haunt them in this movie, and it's going to be even bigger and more powerful. So the two sisters are going to have to get over their difference if they are to survive, and whether or not they do is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. I wasn't overly excited for this movie. Now the first film, Ready or Not, I thought was enjoyable. It had some moments that made me laugh. It had some really cool moments as far as violence is concerned. I liked the idea, but it just didn't have that lasting impression that it had for a lot of other people. Now each to their own. If you love this film, then good for you. You feel free to explain as to why, but for me, I liked it somewhat, but it just wasn't brilliant. And so I thought to myself, why did it need a sequel? So my hesitations were that it was going to be a cash grab, but I had my fingers crossed that it was going to be something a little bit different, because it had a really good cast. It had Samara Weaving, Catherine Newton, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Elijah Wood and David Cronenberg. And so they're names to get anyone to watch a movie, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to check this one out. So I wasn't really risking anything by watching this movie. It was on streaming, and I thought, alright, well, fingers crossed that it was going to be somewhat enjoyable. And after watching Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, I can say that it was enjoyable, but unfortunately it does have major problems that I just really couldn't overlook. Now what I liked about this movie, it had the same vibe as the first film, and it's a very light-hearted, fun experience. It's a movie that has a really cool idea, and that idea is slightly evolved to some degree, and you know you're watching a sequel. So it does take place in a completely different world and environment, and I thought to myself, well, okay, it never really gets boring. There are elements that I really didn't like, but at least it didn't derail the whole experience. And so you have some pretty cool gore effects, some moments, some set pieces that I thought were impressive. I thought the script was actually quite decent. It actually made me chuckle, more so than in the first film, and the first movie was funny enough. And so this movie has that same heart, where it's light-hearted sort of humour, and at the same time it's a thrill ride, because once the action starts, it doesn't really let up. And so that was something that I liked. So the continuity was fairly decent. The tone was actually it was alright. There were some minor issues I had with it, but overall it was just a joy to see these well-known actors having fun at what they were doing. But unfortunately, that's where the positives stop, and this is where the negatives begin. Although it is watchable, it is terribly familiar. This is a movie that I believe is a cash grab, because it just doesn't separate itself enough from the first movie. It's just stuff that you've seen before, therefore it becomes extremely predictable, and that's something I really didn't like. And unfortunately, this is why a lot of these sequels are made. You see that a first film is really popular and it makes back a lot of money, but because the curse of Hollywood is all about money, you make a movie that is very, very similar, that stays to the foundations of something successful. And so it's too much of a risk to create something different, therefore the predictability is there, and it does ruin a film. And unfortunately, Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, it is one of those movies that just didn't need to exist. And so that was the biggest gripe I had with this movie, is that, alright, it is watchable, but unfortunately I've seen it all before. So even though you've got these big name actors, I just didn't think it was enough to create something that justified its existence. And so that was something I didn't like. And I really didn't like the relationship between Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton. Now, I'm not saying they were unlikable, but the movie is fun and light-hearted, but then you have serious melodrama. So it feels like a completely different film, and it does disjoint the continuity to some degree. It doesn't ruin it, but I just thought to myself, you have an action set piece that was very fun, you have some moments that make you laugh, and then you have a deep and meaningful melodrama with this relationship, and it just didn't belong. I really didn't care if they lived or died, and that's not the type of film that it wants to be. It doesn't want to be a deep and meaningful film, and so it's all about the situational aspects. But when you have characters that bog the movie down with unnecessary melodrama, trying to pull on the heartstrings, because it didn't work, it just felt like it was completely out of place. And so that was another major gripe I had with the movie. And so unfortunately those two criticisms prevent this movie from being as good as I wanted it to. But as I said, it is somewhat likeable. There are moments that will make you laugh, there are moments that will thrill you, and so it's not a waste of time. But if you missed it, you're not really missing much, especially if you've seen the first film. And so it pains me to say I want to give every movie a fair go, but very soon I realised, alright, well this is not really diverting it too far away from the formula of the first film, therefore that cash grab aspect really comes into play. So overall, for Ready or Not to, Here I Come, I'm going to give this one 2 stars. It's not a terrible film, a standalone movie it'd been even better, but if you've seen the first film, then you've seen this movie, you don't really need to watch it. Alright guys, that's it for my review, hope you enjoyed it. Till next time you're watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.